Not me talking about this whole shelf and forgetting to press record. Let's start again, shall we? Hello my loves, and thank you for joining me. It's Kirsten, and today we are doing an in-depth bookshelf tour. So I did put up a poll on Discord as to what video you would like to see first, either an in-depth bookshelf tour or all the book series I'm currently in the middle of. The bookshelf tour 1, so we're having that now, and the book series that I'm in the middle of will be coming to you in July. So let's just get on with it. You know what a bookshelf tour is. Let's go through all of my shelves. We've got these 4 here, and we've also got my classics shelf in the other room, so we're going to go through all of those, and I hope you enjoy. I figured I'd give a bit of an overview for each section before we get into it. So these 2 bookshelves, because I've split them into 2s, these 2 are my fantasy, young adult and manga. So these are the first 2 shelves that we'll be tackling. The camera angle's a bit awkward and you can't see me because this is above my head, but we have my Throne of Glass shelf. I really love Throne of Glass. Sarah J. Maas is a nostalgia author for me. It's something I've said many times, and I decided that I wanted 2 full shelves. I could have put Sarah J. Maas on one shelf. Definitely these shelves are big enough to do that, but decided that is not what I wanted. So we do have a little card here from a friend at work for my birthday, and we have my special edition of Throne of Glass, which I love. And then we have all of the Throne of Glass books here. I did treat myself and get the new hardback versions, which I really loved, because before this I had the old paperback editions and they were tattered and battered, so I did treat myself and replace the whole set with these hardbacks. I love these. This is a series I used to reread every single year. I haven't done that in a little while. It's definitely just nostalgia. Are they the best written things in the world? No, but I just really enjoy them. They're just a lot of fun. And yes, this one is the prequel, The Assassin's Blade. However, I always have it third. For those of you that have read the series, you know there is a scene in Air or Fire where our main character is talking about her past and the things that have happened in her past, and that is this book. So I kind of either read it after Air or Fire or during Air or Fire when she's doing those talks. Now let's go across to that one. So we have my Sarah J. Maas shelf continuing. We have my String of Hearts plant here. And then we've got a mixture of different things. So on here, so these are little unicorns that I got from Thailand. Absolutely love these. And they go up here because of Crescent City. Again, if you've read that book, you kind of get the reference. But Crescent City is Sarah J. Maas' adult fantasy series. The first book is definitely the best, but I still enjoy the whole series. Like I do really enjoy it. Then we've got a graphic novel, which is Catwoman, Soul Stealer. I have the graphic novel and the novelization. Again, pretty much a Sarah J. Maas fan at this point. Do I think her books could do with a bit more editing recently because of how popular she's got? Yes, but nostalgia does a lot. And then of course we have the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, with my favourite book being A Court of Silver Flames. I loved this book. It was fantastic. It's like I've reread a couple of times. I love it. The only thing I don't like is that this design continues on the spine of the books, which it's not picking up on, whereas on the other 3 it doesn't. And again, I prefer these covers. These are the new covers. They did a whole recover and I much prefer these. I don't know, I just think they look so much better than having the person on the front. I know, I'm in the minority there. So that's the first 2 top shelves. They are the Sarah J. Maas shelves. Very happy. So let's carry on back over here. This shelf is my Brandon Sanderson shelf, which I adore. So I've always had a Brandon Sanderson shelf, just like I've always had Sarah J. Maas on their own separate shelf. There's just certain authors that I will always give them a separate shelf. Brandon Sanderson mainly because of how many books there are. So again, we have a little card for move-in, and I've got some little like trinket things here. Let me bring you a bit closer. So yeah, so this is just a little picture I had in a picture book that I decided to put in this frame. This is from the Poetry Pharmacy. They're little capsules and inside each capsule is a little poem, which I just thought was really cool. And then of course the actual books. So the one I have on display is Tress of the Emerald Sea. This is from his Kickstarter that he did, and I really am happy I have this one. However, I probably wouldn't have supported the Kickstarter if I knew they were going to be coming out so soon in these editions. But behind it we do have the rest of the Kickstarter, although Tress of the Emerald Sea is the only one I've read so far, which is not surprising for me. And then we have his short story collection just behind here. And then Elantris and Warbreaker, the two current standalones. Mistborn trilogy, which I really enjoy, going into the Stormlight Archive books. I have actually read the fourth one. I've just unhauled the hardback because I read it in hardback, but I much prefer the split paperback edition. So when I get round to rereading the rest of the series, like I reread Way of Kings, but I haven't continued on. So when I finally do that, I will get the fourth book in the split paperback edition. And then we have his young adult sci-fi series, which I've read the first two books, haven't read the third one. I need to get the short story collection and then the fourth book and finish that out, but haven't done that yet. So yeah, that's the top two shelves done. So now we go into the rest of my fantasy books. The way I've done it is kind of like by height order and then A to Z. So here we have all of my hardback fantasy books if all of the series are in hardback. If I have an author and I own a paperback of theirs and a hardback, I have those together in the paperback section. But it doesn't happen often, so that's why I've kind of done it this way. It makes sense to me. But yeah, so we've got my hardbacks, we've got my big paperbacks, and then we get into a couple of just like odd sizes that would look weird in the rest of the shelves. So let's have a little bit of a closer look. Behind my String of Hearts plant, we have Emily Wilde's series. I love this series by Heather Fawcett. One of my favourite series. I get so excited for the new books that are coming out. It's just so good. This is a cozy, light academia fantasy. We're following Emily Wilde. He's a professor in everything to do with fairies, hence why in the first book she's trying to make an encyclopedia of fairies. But she has her colleague, Professor Wendell Bumblebee, who comes along and he's very charming and he can woo people, whereas Emily is the complete opposite. And it's just really fun seeing them grow together, go through these different things together, seeing the depictions of the different fairy folk. Like, it's just so much fun. I really enjoy this series. We also have Thorns Remain, which is a really good fantasy. Like, it's more kind of historical leaning, but it's to do with Scottish folklore, which I really enjoy. The Will of the Many I wasn't as impressed by, and lots of people love this book, but I just have read quite a few like it and I've been more impressed by other ones. Godkiller and Sunbringer by Hannah Kenner, really like this series. Let's just move you around slightly. We then have the Library trilogy, so the first two books in that. This is an edition I love. I have damaged it, which is so upsetting because this is a gorgeous book and look at the edges. Stunning! This is the Lot Library edition, and I was going to get the second book in the same edition. However, all they did was do the exact same edges and just do the exact same thing. So I was like, I'm not paying extra for that, there's no point. But this is a series that I really enjoy, have spoken about quite a bit. It's a series that looks at war, what it is to be on either side, who's actually the enemy. It also kind of blends the genre of fantasy and sci-fi. Like, it's just really good. The Witcher, and this one I haven't read, which is a short story collection about witches, which again is another Locked Library pick, one of the few that I've kept, and I really like the edges on this with the little broomstick. Moving on, we have some of the bigger paperbacks. This is a series, actually both of these are series that I adore. So the Age of Uprising series I became obsessed with, read both of these books in quick succession last year. Really am excited for the third book. I've got no idea when it's coming out. This is kind of like I always want to say steampunk, but it's not really steampunk. It's kind of like artificing I just feel like it's really underrated. It does so much with the series. It gets really dark at times, and I don't know, I absolutely love it. It's definitely one that's underrated and more people need to give this a read. Like, it's so good. I love it. Please give this one a try. It's worth it, especially if you do like darker fantasy, but this one with more like artificing elements, it works. And then we have another really dark series, which is the Traitor Barrow Cormorant series, and I love this. This is such a good series as well, like so dark, so well done, looks at colonization, and we have Barrow who is trying to take down the empire from within, and the choices that she has to make as a result are just excruciating. It's a great series. Read the first book. I'm looking forward to continuing on, but I'm in a bit of a fantasy slump at the minute, so probably give myself a couple months and then I'll get back to it. And then we'll just go down to the last little bit. So I have my little dried flower. This is a rose that my partner got me a little while ago. It's absolutely lovely, and I've just kept it dried because it's so lovely. But we have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry, which is a really nice cozy fantasy book. Really enjoyed this one, especially good if you like pastries and hot drinks, but make sure you have them with you when you're reading this book. It's very good. We've got The Cleaving, which wasn't as good, to be quite honest, but I'm keeping it because I love this cover. It's so beautiful. This was a King Arthur retelling, but from one woman's perspective, and it was okay, but it could have been better. And behind here we have the Cashel's Dart series, which is not in the correct order, which I became obsessed with when I was in college, but recently when I tried rereading wasn't as obsessed, but I still want to keep. This is the start of my paperback collection of fantasy, and I've done it, as I said, in A to Z Author, and this is what I mean by some of the hardbacks might not be with the other hardbacks, because I have the rest of Susanna Clarke's books here, so I didn't want to split it. So again, going a bit more in depth, we have My Little Plant, which I love. We have The Goblin Emperor, which is another underrated book. I think for a nice cozy political fantasy, it's really good for it. Would recommend. We have a couple of Marie Brennan books which I haven't read. I haven't even got the first book. I think these are the third and fourth book respectively, but I do want to read them eventually because I am obsessed with this series. This is the Lady Trent series by Marie Brennan, and I adore it. I just think it's such a good series. It's kind of like Jane Austen meets dragons, and I know I say that tagline all the time with this series, but I love it. I've read the first 3 books in the series. I do need to continue on, but I'm doing what I always do when I enjoy a series, which is if I love it, I'm going to save it and hoard it rather than actually reading it. But yeah, I do. I love this series. It's filled with illustrations. It is just gorgeous. Would recommend. Then we have, let me turn you around slightly actually. Okay, so then we've got the Master of Sorrows series. Read the first book. I need to reread it so I can continue on with the series. It's definitely something I would like to do soon, because I think the third book going to be coming out soon-ish. I'm not actually sure when. Could even be already out, who knows. But this one's a good one. Just a nice classic fantasy, but instead of from the hero's perspective, you're seeing it from the villain's perspective, which I like. So you're seeing a coming of age story, but for the anti-hero. And I like that idea. Then of course we have Susanna Clarke. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is one of my favourite books of all time. Now, I adored this book. It is brilliant. It's definitely a book I want to reread. It's fantastic. I loved it. This is a historical fiction fantasy set around like the Napoleonic Wars, but with wizards, and I loved it. We also have footnotes that are to do with fairy folk, and I don't know, I just adored it. This is the best book. Spoken about this one a lot. Definitely want to do a reread at some point. And then the rest of Susanna Clarke's books. This is a little short story collection, which I also really enjoyed. And the last few books on this shelf, we have the Mask of Mirrors trilogy. Well, technically it's the Rook and Rose trilogy by M.A. Carrick. One of the authors is actually Marie Brennan. It's why I got interested in this series. I do really like it. It's like a political Venetian fantasy with tarot magic. It's good. It is a little bit complex, but I did like it, the second book being my favourite. And then we have Tessa Gratton, 2 books here. Queens of Innisleer, really enjoyed. I think it's a bit underrated. And then Lady Hotspur, which I haven't read. But these are Shakespeare retellings with a gender twist, and I did really enjoy them, especially this one. I think it's really beautiful, really well written, definitely underrated. And now we're going to move over to this shelf. Totally didn't talk about my little snail. This is something I picked up secondhand. I just really like it because I like snails. I'm weird like that. But we have my shelf here. We've got a little mushroom that I just thought was cool. We've got some ghosts. These are from the York Ghost shop. I went all the way to York, which is quite far for me to travel, just for these. I queued up for like 2 or 3 hours to get some ghosts, and I love them, and they definitely were worth it for me, so very happy with them. So you'll see these dotted around. To the books, we have the Faithful and Fallen series by John Gwynne. Really good fantasy series, especially if you want something dark and gritty. I am going to be doing a video on dark gritty fantasy books. I think that's going to come like in autumn time, because I feel like that's a good time to start reading those sort of books. But yeah, this was really, really good. Slow start, but once it gets going, you can't put it down. This is a series I read pretty much back to back, which is very rare for me. Really enjoyed it. We then have Christina Henry books, and this is where I'm a little bit like, I don't know whether these should be here. I've always had them in my fantasy books, but technically these are horror books. They are horror retellings. So you have The Girl in Red, which is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling in like this post-apocalyptic world. You've then got Alice, which is, pretty sure you can work this out, Alice in Wonderland retelling, very dark. This is the darkest book that they've done, I think. We then have Lost Boy, which is a Peter Pan retelling. The Mermaid, which you would think is a Little Mermaid retelling, but is actually more about the first circus that came about in America and the mermaid exhibit they had there. And then we've got Horseman, which is a retelling of The Headless Horseman. Was good. Like, these are all books that I have really enjoyed. I'm not as keen on Christina Henry's newer stuff, but these I really enjoyed. And technically these should be in my horror section, but they're here because they've always been here. Although I have one of Christina Henry's books over in my horror section because that's not a retelling. Technically this should move, so it may move. I haven't made up my mind. You'll have to put in the comments below whether you think they should move, but it's there for now. Then if we swing round to this half, I can see we've got another little ghost. We've got Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett, which I have not read and I need to read. I've had it on my shelf for ages. We've got The Spear That Cuts Through Water, which was a recent gift from Naomi. Thank you so much. Empire of the Vampire, which I adored. I ended up loving this book. Look how many annotations are in there. This was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to reading the second one, but I am waiting for it to come out in paperback because I like my series to match. I am that sort of person. Then have Jade City. This is a series I need to continue, an urban fantasy. It was okay, not my favourite, but I'm intrigued to see how it continues. Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. This is a series I do want to continue, especially because I have been told that from the second book onwards it gets really good. This was a Discord book club pick from last year, which was really good. Talking about Discord, we have Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Murillo, which is a folklore retelling, very dark fantasy, and this was May's book club pick. So if you're ever interested, I'll have Discord linked below. We have a monthly book club. Swing around a little bit more, we have Marvelous Light. I love this series. This is a fantasy romance mystery series. This is one of the books that kind of crosses over. I could have had this in my romance section, could have had it in my mystery section, decided to keep it in my fantasy section. This may move around, who knows, but this is really fun. It's kind of like a historical fantasy with romance, with a murder mystery, and each one is queer. Cannot wait. Again, I'm waiting for the third book to come out in paperback to pick up and read. I love this series, really would recommend. And then we have the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. I love this series, it's so good. And again, this is also a series that could go in horror, because these are, again, kind of retellings of different childhood stories. So like you've got Hansel and Gretel, Jack and Jill. So you've got like different retellings, like there's Dracula and a Frankenstein retelling in one. Like there's a lot. So, and it's also horror leaning, but these are also portal fantasies. So for now they're in the fantasy section. Love this series. Really need to continue on. I need to get the most recent book. Actually, that's something I really need to do, so maybe I'll order that in a minute because I've been meaning to do that for ages. So these are the first few ones, and the rest of them, the rest of the Wayward Children series here. Again, love this series, it's so good. And then we go into some more fantasy with these little figures that I picked up from Thailand. Actually, this is a terrible angle. Hang on. That's a bit better. But yeah, so these little figures that I picked up from Thailand. So we have The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is like a fantasy historical romance. And again, Silvia Moreno Garcia is an author that I have in a few different places because they do a variety of different genres. Erin Morgenstern books. I love The Starless Sea. One of my favourite books of all time. It's so good. This one has been tabbed a lot. It's beautiful. It's stories within stories. I loved it. Night Circus, I need to reread. I really enjoyed this one. Angels of Music is like, again, I feel like I'm not sure where this should be. Apparently this is like Charlie's Angels but Phantom of the Opera and I don't know. We have Magician's Daughter, which I need to read, which is like a cute little light fantasy. Patrick Rothfuss used to be one of my favourite fantasy authors, but with how much I've read lately, I don't think he is up there anymore, and we are still waiting on the third book. But I do love Name of the Wind. It's been a long time since I've read it, and maybe when I reread it, I will have that love back. Who knows? Then if we swing around here, we have all of my V.E. Schwab books. Love V.E. Schwab, another author that I used to have a separate shelf for. However, there's not enough books to warrant a full separate shelf. So instead we just have them mixed in, and this is also one of the ones that has mixed age ranges. So this is their younger series that I need to continue on with, City of Ghosts. This is a young adult series as well, which I think is so underrated. I loved this series. This Savage Song, probably my favourite series by V. Schwab. I really enjoyed it. Definitely want to give it a reread. I loved the concept. I loved what it did. Definitely something I need to get back into. Like, I thought it was really good. Darker Shade of Magic series. I haven't read the newest book. Again, waiting for paperback so it matches. And I did enjoy this trilogy. Really, really fun. Vicious and Vengeful. I think there's meant to be another book coming out in this series. I really enjoyed Vicious. Reread it last year and annotated it, and I did enjoy it. I thought it was really good. I like the concepts. I like what it's doing and questioning. Again, this is another one where we have different sizes because I wanted to keep them all together. So we have Gallant, which I really liked. It's like a gothic story that's kind of more young adult leaning, really beautiful. And then The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which is one of my favourite books, as you'll see in just a second. As if we go across, it is Faced Out. I have 2 editions. This is one of the few times where I have multiple editions of the same fantasy book. Like, it's not something I do often. Classics, I have a couple of multiple editions, but V. Schwab is the only one that I have multiple editions of. Love this book so much. I do want to reread it. I was planning to reread it in May, but then I fell into a fantasy reading slump, so it didn't happen, but I cannot wait to reread it. We've got these little tulips that I picked up from Amsterdam, which I love. And then we've got Lani Taylor. I really want to get, the young adult series. I read it when I was a teenager and adored it, but I really want to get it and reread it. Like, I really do. I love Strange Redeemer. It's absolutely gorgeous. One of my favourite books. Makes me cry. Love it so much though. Definitely want to get the rest of the young adult books. I can rebuy them. This is the only thing with unhauling, but there are new covers for this series, so I'm thinking I might do that anyway. Lord of the Rings, I've read the first one, need to read the second one. I'm doing these via audiobook. One of the few audiobooks I absolutely love because it's a full cast. Got ones that are narrated by Andy Serkis and it's just great. Trial of the Sun Queen, fantasy romance. Really enjoyed the first book. Then we have the first binding, which was a gift, and I am looking forward to reading this one. It has been said that if you like Name of the Wind, this is a good one for fans of it. However, some people criticised it, saying it is too similar. But I guess we'll find out what I think. Realising these angles are not the best, but kind of awkward to film, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so then we get into Jen Williams, which is the last of my fantasy books, although I do have this cute little thing. Again, this is something where I just cut out the artwork from this little like magazine thing and put it inside here, and I think it's really cute. Jen Williams, I have The Copper Promise that I need to read. Ninth Reign, which I liked. I need to continue on with the series. I thought this was really good. Again, another underrated fantasy series. I need to do like an underrated fantasy series, and there's a few videos I want to do, and I will eventually get around to doing them. But now we go into sci-fi, so let's swing you around a little bit further. Another little tulip from Amsterdam. We have a sci-fi horror, which is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. Definitely a book I want to read soon. This was also a gift from Naomi again. Thank you. We then have Gideon the Ninth, my favourite sci-fi book. I love it. I am currently reading Harry the Ninth as of filming this. Let me move this down, there we go. And I'm really enjoying Harry the Ninth. The Gideon the Ninth is so good. I loved it. It's complex, it's great. It's necromancers in space. Give it a read. It is brilliant. Don't be worried if you're scared of it being confusing. It's complex, yes, but if you've read a lot of fantasy, I think you'll be fine with it. Red Rising, which I'm not in like a super rush to read, but I picked up because so many people do love this series and say how it gets better over time, so I'm willing to give it a try. This one was another gift from Naomi, so thank you so much. Leviathan Wakes, this is book 1 of the Expanse series. I am getting more into sci-fi, so I really wanted a big series to sink my teeth into, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. And no, I've got high expectations for it. I think it's going to be really good. We then have a gift from my mum, which is The Ferryman. I don't really know what this one is about. It feels a bit more like a dystopian sci-fi, potentially buddy reading this one with Christina, so we'll see. A lot of you have said that you liked The Passage by this author, so we'll see. If I like this one, I can read The Passage as well. A sci-fi romance, Ocean's Echo. I really loved this one. I do need to get Winter's Orbit, but this was a fantastic book if you're looking for a bit of romance. Again, this is a gay romance. Really good, loved the concept, loved the world, would like to see more in this universe. The Weird Book, which is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, really enjoyed this. And then a couple of young adult sci-fi, which is part of the same series. I have read Aurora Rising. Did really enjoy this one. It actually gave me kind of Annihilation vibes, but also Guardians of the Galaxy vibe. So I really did enjoy this one, but I have yet to continue on. And I should have, really. But yeah, I've been saying that I should continue on for like a year now, so eventually we'll get there. But that is the end of my adult fantasy and sci-fi, so let's move on to young adult. Did the similar thing with my young adult books where I have young adult hardbacks and then going into paperback. Fantasy is the only section where I've separated adult and young adult because this is where I have the most young adult book. Although saying that, is the same on my mystery shelves. I'll show you if we'll get around to it. These are little figures that I have of Sailor Moon. Again, these I got in Thailand. Actually no, this one was from the British Library when they were doing their manga exhibit. I think that was like a couple years ago. That one is from Thailand. Anyway, let's continue on. We have the beautiful series by Renee Ahdieh, which I did love this book. I thought this book was fantastic. I loved everything about it. It was so well done, but I wasn't as much of a fan of the other ones. Like, so The Damned I didn't really like. The Righteous I preferred. The fourth book I haven't got because I can't decide if I actually want to read it because I feel like I know where it's going to go and I'm not sure if I'm into it. So we'll see. I think what might end up happening is I'll keep the first one and then potentially unhaul these. We'll see though, because again, I do that thing where I'm like, oh, I'll unhaul it, and then a few years later I'll regret that I've unhauled it. So we then have The Stolen Heir. This is the duology that is a kind of spin-off from the Cruel Prince trilogy. Really like it. I've read the first one, need to read the second one. I really enjoyed it. The Cruel Prince trilogy is not a trilogy I thought I'd ever like, but I became obsessed with it. So yeah, I love it, which shouldn't have surprised me because I used to read loads of Holly Black when I was younger. I loved her book so much. I loved her depiction of Faye, so I shouldn't have been surprised that I liked this. We then have Stephanie Garber books. We've got the Caraval trilogy and then the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. I really enjoyed this trilogy. It's really good. I loved Once Upon a Broken Heart, but I do feel like the final book, A Curse for True Love, just wasn't needed. Unfortunately, like I don't feel like it did anything. It should have been kept as a duology, in my opinion. But yeah, it's good. I'm pleased I've got them anyway. We then have a young adult series that I feel like is underrated, which is the Furyborn trilogy. I really enjoyed this trilogy. It was so good. So it's the Imperium trilogy and this was so interesting. Again, it takes a look at what is good and evil and you kind of are following the person who becomes evil, and I love it. I really enjoyed this trilogy, so I would really recommend. I want to reread this trilogy actually because I thought it was very good. Then we have Trisha Levenseller, The Shadows Between Us. This is a book I have reread a couple of times. We now have a second book coming out that is following our main character's sister, which I'm looking forward to. This is kind of like fantasy romance but young adult. Really enjoyed it, just a lot of fun. Then we have Sorcery of Thorns, which I'm missing a book. So when I've moved, I have definitely lost a couple of books, but so we have Sorcery of Thorns, this is a good one, and we've got a couple of Elizabeth Lim books. This is the Spin the Dawn duology. I liked it, I thought it was good. I did read their other duology, wasn't as big a fan, so kept this one instead. I like this one, I like clothes, I like fantasy books that have clothes in and stuff. I don't know, I just liked it. But yeah, this is good. Again, it's kind of like a fantasy romance but also fairy tale retelling. So now we get into my paperback young adult fantasy. We've got Enchantment of Ravens, which is a really good cozy fantasy. If you're after a cozy fantasy book, give this one a try. It's to do with like the fae and stuff. It's just really fun and cute. This series I loved. I really enjoyed this series. The Diviners by Libba Bray. Thought it was fantastic. It's kind of dark occult vibes. Really good. However, don't bother with the fourth book. The fourth book was really drawn out and really unnecessary. This, like Before the Devil Breaks You, made me cry. Thought it was fantastic. This one, it doesn't do it justice. We then have Wicked King. So I've read Trilogy on my Kindle, and I then saw this one in a free library, so I thought I'd pick it up. I would like to get the whole series, but for now this is the only one I own. Gracelyn. This is, oh gosh, this brings me back to nostalgia. When I was a teen, really enjoyed this one. Gracelyn and Fire I really enjoyed by Kristin Cashore. The other books not so much, but I would like to definitely get Fire again. Again, this is one where I've like, oh, I unhauled it because I'm probably never going to reread it, but actually I have so much nostalgia, I probably would reread it. Let's move around slightly. We then have this one, which is a Little Mermaid retelling. I really enjoyed it. This one my sister gifted to me, which was quite good. It was kind of like an underworld crime scene thing. Like, it was good. Need to continue on with the series, but I would have to reread the first book to do that. The Last Namsara I really enjoyed. I enjoyed this so much more than I thought. There are other books in this series, but they're kind of like companions to them, and I would like to carry on. She's also done a recent book which was The Crimson Moth, which has had some really good reviews, so I would be interested in picking up that when it comes out in paperback as well. We then have Kat Dunn series. This is kind of like Frankenstein inspired French Revolution setting book. Only a Monster is an underrated book. Give it a read. It's so good. Again, it questions what makes a monster, who gets to decide who's the hero, who's the monster, and it also has time travel in it. Very good. We then have a couple of Dracula retellings. This one is The Deathless Girls by Karen Milgard Hargrave. Really enjoyed this one. This is more historical leaning. And then we have the And I Darken trilogy by Kirsten White. This was really good. Really enjoyed it. This is a Vlad the Impaler retelling, but with a gender twist. Thought it was really good. Okay, we have the final two shelves, which this is going to be really hard to film because I'm having to hold the camera, so if it's shaky I apologize. But this is my manga. We've also got some graphic novels. We've got some of the V. Schwab ones where we've got The Extraordinaries. I got them as individual ones as they were coming out in Forbidden Planet. I could have got the nicer bind up, but decided that this was a lot more fun waiting patiently between each edition. We then also have the Shades of Magic graphic novel, which I really enjoyed. This is not a graphic novel, but it is a children's book collection, which is Angelina Ballerina, which I used to adore. We then have a couple of books that just kind of fit here. So Suzumi is a novelization of a film. Mad Love is to do with the DC world. So I kind of just put it in with this because I didn't know where else to put it. Some manga, Children of the Whales, I am deciding if I'm going to continue on with. Sailor Moon, Yona of the Dawn I need to read. Promised Neverland I adore. Moriarty I'm going to be continuing on with. I have 3 missing because I'm going to be reading that soon. We have Dead Man's Wonderland, which I'm buddy reading with my partner, although we kind of stopped that. We need to get back to that. Tokyo Ghoul, I have read the whole series and my partner wants to read this, so I might actually get him to move this to his shelf. I can't reach it, so he'll have to move that if he wants to read them. And then we have a couple of manga classics, which I really enjoyed. I actually want to collect more of these. Again, I love classics, so having them done in different formats I love. So we've got Jane Eyre, Othello and Dracula. Okay, that's the first 2 shelves done. So now we have these 2 shelves which are done in a corner, and yes, I did do it so that I have 2 and they go across 2 and then down. Same thing happens here where it goes shelf and then round, and then we go down, and this is split into different genres. I've kind of done alphabetical, although one shelf is completely different. But let's get straight into it. I swear, we are almost halfway through. After these 2, we've got one more shelf, but that's smaller. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I hope you're enjoying. I definitely love talking about my book collection, but anyway, let's carry on. Okay, awkward angle once again, because this is the top shelf. This is my mythology. As you can see, it's mainly Greek mythology. We have a lot of Jennifer Saint books. I don't have Atalanta. Do I kind of wish I'd got it physically? Yes, but I have it as an ebook and I wasn't 100% sure on that story because it's not my favourite. Because that's to do with like Jason and the Gold of... it's not my favourite with the Argonauts and stuff. I have these ones. I love them. Hera is the newest book that I got, which I am looking forward to reading. Definitely I went for a phase of reading so many Greek mythology books for a specific video, which I did love doing, but it did burn me out. So I did take pretty much a year break away from reading mythology, but now I'm so excited to get back into it. We then have Clytemnestra, which I'm actually going to be reading soon as part of a Instagram book club. And I did get this gorgeous edition, which proves how long I've had this, because I bought this one as soon as it came out because of how beautiful it was, but just have not read it. So yeah, looking forward to reading that one soon. We also have Fruit of the Dead by Rachel Lyon. This is one that is a contemporary retelling of mythology. Normally these are kind of historical fiction leaning, but I'm really looking forward to reading a contemporary one. And I love this cover. I've spoken about this book quite a bit recently because it's also my summer TBR. We then have this gorgeous book which I picked up while I was in Italy. This is Galatea by Madeline Miller, but this is in Italian and it is just beautifully illustrated throughout. It is so gorgeous. I absolutely loved it. Couldn't leave it. Galatea is a tiny little book, but it's beautiful. I really enjoyed this story. I mean, should it have been £10? Probably not, but it was beautiful. So then we have the rest of Madeline Miller's books, which, can I bring you any closer? Yeah, that's better. So we've got Song of Achilles and Circe. Song of Achilles, I adore it so much. Want to reread it, but I know I'm going to cry. So beautiful story, heartbreaking tale of Achilles, and it's gorgeous. Then have Helen of Troy, which is a beautiful book. Really enjoyed this one. It is chunky, but really good. Really good if you're looking for a perspective of Helen, a woman that was always seen as this either temptress or this person that's run away from her responsibilities. I like this because it gives her a voice, so we really get to explore her as a character. Cassandra by Krista Wolf, fantastic book. This is a German book that's been translated and it is a stream of consciousness of Cassandra. I adore this. One of my favourite Greek myths books that I've read. It's great. I love it. Going around a bit more, we've got the last of the Greek myth books. Got Daughters of Sparta, 1,000 Ships. These are all kind of my to do with Battle of Troy books. We then got Pandora, which I need to read. Medusa, the Penelopiad, like there's quite a lot. Let's go over a little bit more and bring you closer actually. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so we've got a couple of classics that I want to read, or that I've read. So I've got the Odyssey, which I want to read, the Iliad, which I have read, and the Metamorphoses, which I am in the middle of reading. These I decided to put with my mythology collection rather than with my classic. And then we have a couple of mythology collections, but from different cultures. So we've got a book on Caribbean mythology. This was brilliant. This was sent to me by the publisher and I adored this book. This was really good. I would recommend giving it a try. Beautiful story, heartbreaking. We've got a couple books on Korean mythology here. I really enjoyed this series by Kat Cho. It's so good. It's the Wicked Fox series. It's a young adult series looking at Korean mythology. And then we have Japanese mythology with The Shadow of the Fox. This is underrated as well. I loved this book. well, just a series actually. The last book made me cry. I think it's a great series. Okay, then we swing around to this shelf, and as you'll see, it's pretty much empty. I'm using this shelf for my TBR books. So this is what's on my June TBR, my readathon TBR, and then as I've read them, they'll get put here so that I can remember for the wrap-ups. And that's all this one is. Basically, it's an empty shelf. I can repurpose it. I don't necessarily need it like this, but it's nice knowing I've got an extra shelf for space if I want it. Now we move on to horror, and we have, again, where I've done it in like high order and done it like that, because if it's not in high order, it kind of bothers me. So we have a mixture of books of young adult and adult in here. It's not something I have separated. One young adult, actually, let me bring you closer because it's going to be easier. That's much better, and you don't have a weird bit of my head in the way. The book on display is A Diary of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Really enjoyed this one, thought it was beautiful. It's a Dracula retelling, but Dracula's never named. It's actually from one of Dracula's brides. And then to the left here we have a couple of books. So we've got House of Hunger by Alexis Sanderson, which is a great book, and again it is a vampire lean-in book, and I loved it because I love books that have vampires in them. I'm a little bit obsessed. And then we have a young adult horror that came in the Locked Library subscription, and this is one I read. I did like it enough to say that I would potentially reread it at some point, plus this edition is absolutely gorgeous. S.T. Gibson is another author where I've got one of her other books in a different place, so we'll get to that. And again, this is what I've been doing with just little pictures that I like in little frames. Let me move this candle though. Leigh Bardugo's book that I haven't read. Sylvia Mono Garcia, Silver Nitrate. I do want to read this one. I think it's going to be really good. It's kind of like a horror film book. We then have The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which is a Frankenstein retelling by Kirsten White, but from Elizabeth Frankenstein's perspective. Really enjoyed it. Another Frankenstein retelling, Al Hidge's Progeny. This is Frankenstein, but make it dinosaurs. It was actually pretty good. We then have a couple of Ava Reid books. We've got Juniper and Thorn and Study in Drowning. I really loved Juniper and Thorn. Wasn't as impressed with Study in Drowning. It's meant to be dark academia. I don't have it with my dark academia books because I don't think it's dark academia. It's more horror fairy tale leaning rather than anything else, like folklore. This one is a retelling of The Juniper Tree, which is a fairy tale. A book I need to read, Winterwood I liked. This is a young adult witchy leaning book by Shay Earnshaw. Then we've got a couple of Erin A. Craig books, House of Salt and Sorrow, which is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, Small Favours, which was just really creepy. I really enjoyed it. This one is a good trilogy by Theodora Goss. This is like an ode to all of our Gothic classics and goes, well, what if they had daughters? So you've got the daughter of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you've got the daughter of Dr. Moreau, like a few other ones that are all kind of there, and it's the women that we follow. Really enjoyed it. A book I need to read. And then we've got, like I said, the other Christina Henry book. This is Near the Bone. This is just their pure horror book rather than anything else. And then a couple of shorter horror books right at the end there. They're little short stories. That's these two by Cassandra Cool. And I did read The Salt Grows Heavy. It's kind of like a Little Mermaid retelling. Really enjoyed it. Very good. So let's move on. These are my horror paperback. Got this first stack over here, which is done alphabetical. At the bottom we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I have read the second book, just don't own it yet, not physically. We then got a couple of books by S.A. Barnes, which I did enjoy. These are retellings, almost like continuations. So Dracula's Child is a continuation of Dracula. The City of Dr. Moreau is a continuation of The Island of Dr. Moreau. You Let Me In, one of my favourite books. I absolutely loved this. It's really dark, really well done, kind of folklore lean in. Our Share of Night, I want to read. Into the Drowning Deep, one of my favourite horror books. Absolutely loved it. Killer Mermaids, brilliant. God of Endings, I need to read. It's got vampires. Mexican Gothic was pretty good, kind of like Haunted House, kind of giving you Rebecca vibe. And then we have a couple of Stephen King books which I need to read. Okay, we go into my T. Kingfisher collection. I have read all of them except the Twisted ones, and I do like T. Kingfisher's darker leaning books. I think they're really good, they're really well done. Each of them has something slightly different, but they all have this kind of same humour tone to it, so really enjoy those. The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova, I started, I need to continue, I do want to continue. This is like a Dracula retelling. A couple of books that if you like Frankenstein, they're meant to be really good ones that are kind of inspired by it. Botanical Daughter, Orpheus Builds a Girl. Really want to read these ones soon, have been recommended. Slenderman is just a really creepy book. The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. This was okay, not my favourite again. Don't know if I'm going to keep this one, to be honest. Then we got a couple of Anne Rice books. Into the Vampire is my favourite book of all time. I loved it. You can see how much I've annotated this book. Fantastic. So I definitely want to read more Anne Rice. So we have The Wolf Gift, which is like her werewolf book, and then Vampire Lestat carrying on with this series from Into the Vampire. Young adult, creepy book. It was good. I liked it. Madman's Daughter is a retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau. As you can tell, I like my retellings of Gothic classic. Dracula Undead by Darcy Stoker. This is a continuation of Dracula. And then House of Hollow, which is a really good, creepy, weird ass book. Very good. So that's it for the horror shelf. Let's move on. This is my dark academia shelf. So we start off, as you can see, high order is what we do it by. Creepy little candle that my sister got me that I absolutely love, which I'm not gonna burn, let's face it. We have this book, which I have faced out, like edges out, because those edges are gorgeous. This is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I have read this one. I actually listened to it on audiobook and I thought it was good. A little bit overdone in places, but this is the Locked Library edition, and I did want an edition of this book so I could reread it, so I'm very happy to have got that. Do love this edition, but I also love the edges, so I really wanted those on display. An Education and Malice by S.T. Gibson. Every Exquisite Thing I need to read. This is a Dorian Gray retelling. The Things We Do to Our Friends I need to read. It's meant to be like a summer obsessive dark academia. The Cloisters, which was tarot cards. I did enjoy it. I thought it was good. Definitely could have been better. Another little creepy cat thing that my sister got me. The Furies by Katie Lowe is probably one of the first dark academia books I ever read, and I wasn't a massive fan of it, but now I've read so many more, I'd like to reread this one to see if I prefer it now. We then have Type Hollow Blue, which I need to read. We've got Mrs. S, which is on my summer TBR. The Latinist, which was a gift, which I'm very excited to read. This one is a gift from Elizabeth, so thank you so much for that. This one I didn't know where to put because it's also a mythology retelling, so it could have gone up with my mythology books, but it's also dark academia. So I'm putting it here, and I think after reading it we'll decide where it goes, but again, another one I'm really looking forward to reading soon. Summer Suns, which I really liked. Again, this was one that I read and had to kind of think about for a little while, and then was like, yeah, actually I really enjoyed this one. It was very good, very different take on dark academia because our main character is not the one that's obsessed. I'm not going to show you everyone, but some of the dark academia, like, they're some of my favorites. Like These Violent Delights, one of my favorite books, a tale of obsession, desire, toxicity of it all. Really good, and it also has the academia setting. Fantastic book, highly recommend. Although check your trigger warnings because it's dark. The Secret History, which I'm sure we all know. Madam by Phoebe Wynne, not too bad, pretty good. If We Were Villains, my favourite dark academia book by M.R. Rio. Think Shakespeare, they're obsessed with Shakespeare. Then we've got a couple of weirder dark academia books. We've got the Rabbitback Literature Society, Vita Nostra and Bunny, very weird. Then we go into For Your Own Good, which is kind of like more thriller leaning, but also does work for dark academia because of the setting, and that one's following a teacher. And then we also have Atlas 6, which is a gift from my sister that I haven't read, and All the Devils, which is an arc of a young adult dark academia book. And then we have like my crystals, a creepy little bunny candle that I got. You know, it's just a good shelf. Like, I honestly really like this shelf. But let's swing around to this one, which now goes into my thrillers. So we have, again, same thing where I've got, let me show you an overview. Hardbacks going down into paperbacks because I just prefer the way that looks. Okay, so these are kind of like thriller / gothic books is kind of the way this works. So we've got The Beholders, which you can't see. That's not good. Hang on. Actually, let me bring you in. Much better. Okay, so we have The Beholders, which is a book I want to read soon. It's a historical leaning creepy ass book, apparently. This one is Watch Her Fall. This is a thriller book about ballet dance, and I really like it. This one that I buddy read with Christina, and I love the edges. Like, again, this is one that I faced out because I love these edges. So yeah, I really like this. Would definitely reread it at some point. Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang, which I'm sure everybody knows about. Very good book. My Dark Vanessa, one of the books that I have reread a good couple of times now. Very dark, but so well done. Really, really enjoyed it. It's about a teacher-student relationship and also what effect the Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov had and the way it's been misused. Really good book. The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, really liked. It kind of got me obsessed with Ashley Winstead. I want to get more of her books. I've actually read 2 more, but I've only read them as ebooks, so I want to actually physically get them. Really enjoyed. Portrait of a Thief is not really a thriller. It's a hard one to place because it's like a crime book, and it's about these group of kids that go around stealing art to give back to the countries it was stolen from. It's a character study. It looks at lots of different things, so I kind of put it here because I don't really know where else to put it because it doesn't fit in the other sections. How to Kill Your Family I Need to Read. I've been saying that for ages. Moving around slightly. We've got Penance, Need to Read, Secrets of Heartwood Hall. Loved this book. It is fantastic. Katie is a YouTuber as well, so I'll have her channel linked below. Really good book, really interesting, especially if you like Jane Eyre, Rebecca, different classics like that. This is really, really good. We then have a couple of young adult thrillers. Grown, which is honestly so hard hitting, and I think a lot of people spoke about it at first, but then it kind of lost some of the hype. Very upsetting book, but really well done. Then we have a couple of Holly Jackson books, which I love Holly Jackson, and these are her thrillers. Then we go into some other paperback thrillers that I want to read. We've got Bright Young Things, The Nesting, The Bleeding, which again is kind of like, I'm not sure if it is meant to be in this section because it's kind of more murder mystery leaning, but also it's not cozy, so it doesn't fit with my other murder mysteries, so I guess we'll see. A couple of weird books that I've just put with the thrillers because again, don't know where else to put them. And Promise Boys, which was technically quoted as a young adult dark academia, but I'm not convinced, so it's in the thriller part. And then we have my creepy ass little doll that I picked up from this satanic Christmas market I went to. It's cool. So those are all of my thrillers and dark academia books. Let's go down a level. Not me talking about this whole shelf and forgetting to press record. Let's start again, shall we? This is my murder mystery shelf. This is my cozy murder mystery, I should say. Cozy murder mysteries is where I'm at, it's where I love it. And it all started off with Richard Osman's books, thanks to Christina. Christina's the one that recommended them, and I fell in love with them. They were at a time when I was really stressed, really struggling, and I loved them. So I binge read the first 2 and have been obsessed with them ever since. It's definitely what started off the cozy murder mystery love. We then have this one, which I need to read, and then we go into my Agatha Christie books. So we have the seasonal short story collections. I need to get the winter one, and then the Miss Marple short story collection. I love these. I love short story collections. I love Agatha Christie. It does everything I want it to. Then we go into my paperbacks. We have the Miss Marple books, which I've read all of them except A Pocket Full of Rye, really enjoy. My magnifying glass, which of course every detective needs, although don't ask me about my track record. We then have the Hercule Poirot Christmas book, which I read at Christmas time, another Christmas murder mystery that I picked up second hand, which you can guess when I'm going to read that. We also have Death Comes to Marlowe, which is the second book in the Marlowe Murder Club series. Loved the first book. I don't own it because I read it as a Kindle book. It's actually the case with a lot of the cozy murder mysteries I've read I don't own, but would love to get copies of because I love them so much and would reread. Cozy murder mysteries have become my comfort series, like books that I can just read all the time, never get bored of. So really excited to read this one. We then have Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. Brilliant book, so much fun, really recommend, especially if you want to laugh. These last 2 are puzzle books, which I really do enjoy doing every so often just to break up my day. Good fun. Now we're going to swing round over to here. So these ones are a mixture of cozy murder mysteries, cozy thrillers, and then young adult murder mysteries. It's a bit of a weird shelf, but kind of the vibes went. Behind here we have the Stranger Times series. I still need to get the 4th book, but this is so much fun. I've definitely convinced a few of you to read it. It is so good. It's a paranormal cozy murder mystery series. Really, really good. Would recommend. Spoken about it a lot. We then have another cozy mystery, kind of like fantasy leaning. This is self-published. You can get them all on Kindle Unlimited, but I wanted at least a physical copy to show off on my shelf. We then have Shady Hollow, which is a series that you all tried getting me into, and I did really enjoy the first book. Fantasy leaning, we just have animals that are going around solving mysteries and stuff. It's good fun. Then we have Finley Donovan is killing it. I do also have the second book, but that is a potential for my dream TBR. It's going to be voted on. Really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun annotating. This was just so much fun. This was also a gift. Killers of a Certain Age, I need to read. That was also a gift by Uniquely DJ. Housekeepers, this is a gift from my mum, and these three, they're like the cozy fun thrillers. They don't fit with the darker shelf. They kind of fit here with the cozy vibes. Going into young adult though, we have Maureen Johnson's book. Love this series. So this is a trilogy that kind of wraps up on its own. The Box in the Woods is a standalone, but it continues on from here, so you have to read them in order. I need to get the last one, and then also Maureen Johnson is coming out with a new book soon actually that I would like to read, but again I'll be waiting until they're all in paperback because that's what I own. The Agathas, love this series, really underrated. One of the main characters is obsessed with Agatha Christie. I had so much fun with this, really recommend. And then of course we have Holly Jackson, who is kind of like the biggest one for young adult murder mystery. If you say young adult murder mystery, lots of people will say Holly Jackson. Really enjoyed that series. We have an arc, which is Not Like Other Girls. Haven't read it, don't know where it fits, whether it's thriller, murder mystery, I'm not really sure, so I've just put it there. Then we have a couple of more historical lean-in mystery books, but also young adult. So Anatomy and Stalking Jack the Ripper. Like this series and this book feel very similar. They've got very similar vibes. So if you like one, you'll probably like the other. They are murder mystery, but also romance and historical setting books. Down a level and swinging back round, we are at my historical fiction. Again, do I have any young adult in here? Yeah, a couple. Okay, so this is where I need to read a lot. So Young Mungo, I need to read. This one I really enjoyed. This one is kind of underrated, and I thought it was so good. Like, I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. Yeah, this was a really, really good book, and it's based on some actual historical event. Really dark and creepy. Honestly, could go in the thriller section, but I put it in the historical fiction, which then makes me go, well, should The Beholders be in this section then, because it's historical fiction? This is what I mean. Like, a lot of the shelves, it's just vibes, really. We have a general genre, but some of them are genre blends, so where do you put them? You know, young adult, historical fiction, I need to read. Pillars of the Earth, fantastic book, chunky book, worth the read, very, very dark. I got this one second hand. Lessons in Chemistry, I need to read. The Other Boleyn Girl, I read and enjoyed. This is a King Henry VIII book, but focusing on Anne Boleyn. We then have Catch-22, which I need to read. The Crow Garden, which was a gift. Trial of Lotta Ray, which I think is criminally underrated. Fantastic book. Would really, really recommend if you do like historical fiction, and just a fantastic book. Wolf Hall, still need to read. Was meant to buddy read this. Didn't buddy read very well at all because I just didn't read it. Mad Woman's Ball, underrated book. Give it a read. So good. This is a French book that's been translated, and it looks at how women were treated during asylums. It's actually based on an actual asylum that was in Paris. It's so good. Read it. It's fantastic. The Mercies need to read. Hamnet was really good. Looks at Shakespeare's son and like historical fiction based on that. Very good. We then have Shadow of the Wind, which I need to read. Sarah Waters' books need to read, and The Book Thief need to read. Historical fiction is something that I generally do like, but also never really in the mood for, so takes a lot to get me to read them. To what is aesthetically my favourite shelf. I love this shelf. I want it higher up so it's on display more, but also this does not fit anywhere else. It just doesn't. So, and I don't want it on the very top shelf because again, it's never going to be in show. So instead we put it here. This is my contemporary and romance shelf. There's a couple of things that might get changed once I've read them, potentially, but this is where we're at. And again, some of these could have gone in other sections, but this is what we're dealing with. So let's get a little bit closer in. Wonderland by Juno Dawson is a Alice in Wonderland contemporary, crazy, weird retelling. Lots of fun though, really enjoyed it. And then of course have a Sally Rooney book. Really enjoyed this. So Normal People is my favourite. I did read Conversations with Friends and I didn't love it as much, so I unhauled it. But now I kind of want it back, because I did like it and I would potentially reread it. Really loved this book though. This meant so much to me. I really connected to the characters in this. It was so good, and it's also the book that made me go, maybe contemporary can be really good and can be for me. Then we have Starfish. This is a young adult contemporary book, and again, similar experience where I just loved it and connected so much to the main character in this. It was beautiful, made me cry. Really loved it. Then we go into a few romance. As you can see, this is actually rainbow. This is the only shelf that is rainbow, and I actually stole this idea from one of you where I was asking, how do you organize your shelves? And one of you said, I do it by genre, but my contemporary and romance I do as a rainbow, and I love it. I love the way this turned out. So yes, we have a couple of romance. This is one of my favorite ones that I have reread a good few times. I absolutely love it. Red, White and Royal Blue. It's so good. Magnolia Parks became quickly obsessed with this series and have read all of them except the newest one, which is Into the Dark. This one could actually go with historical fiction, could also go with mystery, could also, you know, it's definitely one of those ones where it's like, where do I put you? But I really enjoyed it, and the main character is obsessed with Jane Austen. This one is an Anna Karenina retelling but done in contemporary. This is such a cute, cozy romance book. I loved it. Want to reread it and annotate. Fantastic book. This is one that I was reading on Kindle and then saw a physical copy and I was like, I have to have it. And then the last few in the blues, we have another historical fiction romance leaning book, part of the Daisy Hates. So like, this is part of the Magnolia Parks series. You have it going on in two lines. You have Magnolia Parks on odd numbers and then Daisy Hates on even numbers, and it's the same story but from different characters' perspective. This one I need to read. I think it's going to be really fun. And Chlorine, which I didn't know where to put because I don't actually know what it's going to go under. But for now, I'm putting it here because it works really well with the rainbow shelf and it is contemporary, so we've put it here for now. So now we have the last shelf, which is my non-fiction shelf. We do have one shelf obviously round to the corner here, but I don't use it for anything. Like, it's literally just odds and ends. But here we have a couple of non-fiction books on authors. These ones I've read, so from Zelda down, I've read. Really enjoyed these. Zelda was brilliant. This is Scott Fitzgerald's wife and fantastic. Being Lolita, very hard-hitting story. A bit like My Dark Vanessa, so if you like that book, I would recommend giving this one a try. But obviously this is non-fiction, so it's a lot more hard-hitting. Geisha of Gion, this is the retaliation book to Memoirs of a Geisha, because the person that the Memoirs of a Geisha is based on was like, no, you've appropriated so much, that's not my story. A Life on Our Planet, really loved this book. Kind of scary, but also brilliant, just like what we're doing to our planet and what we can do to stop. And then one of my favourites I read last year is Mary's Monster. This is a illustrated non-fiction book about Mary Shelley, and it's brilliant. Then I've got my tarot decks, a big non-fiction book about dressing Barbie. This is Barbie Through the Ages, How It's Changed. And then we've got books I need to read. The Walnut Tree, historical about women, what they've had to do. So it says Women, Violence and the Law. Really looking forward to reading this one. The Wager, non-fiction book about a shipwreck. The Witches, Poison I've read. Another book on witchcraft, which I need to read. The Vampires I've read. The Witch's Journal I need to read. And these last couple I need to read. So they are all the non-fiction books. Okay, so that is these 4 shelves done, which is great. So now we're going to move on to the very last shelf, which is in my front room, and that is all classics. So let's get on with that. I honestly, I don't know how long this video is going to be, and I know I've already said that, but yeah, well done. If you're making it this far, I am impressed. Thank you so much. Let me know what one has been your favorite shelf out of these ones. My favorite, honestly, is my romance shelf. I love the way that looks. It looks so fun. Otherwise, it would be kind of like the horror dark academia shelf, actually. Dark Academia shelf. Really like that. But okay, let's stop procrastinating. Let's do that last shelf. Okay, this is my last shelf. I'm actually crouched down a little bit, but I can't be bothered to set the tripod up to lower it again to do this. This is my last shelf. These are my classic shelves. Probably the sound's going to be a bit more echoey in this room because it's a bigger room with, well, it's not even a bigger room, it's just there's less stuff in it. Anyway, this is in my front room. This is by my sofa, and let's just get straight into it. I'm being lazy and holding my camera for this bit because I can't bother to set my tripod up any higher. But this one is just kind of showing off my beautiful edition classics. So we have my little Yorkshire Ghost, which you would recognize these from my TBR game. I love them, they're so cute. But we have some fairy tale collections folklore collections here. I really love these. They're so beautiful. So this one is about fairy tales and this one is about Celtic weird tales. Really am looking forward to diving into these. I love a short story collection and these are gorgeous. We then have some of these beautiful editions. These are the deluxe Penguin Classic editions and I adore them. So these are ones that I've slowly been collecting, although this one was a gift and I'm so grateful, so thank you so much for this. But yes, these are just some of my favourite books. We've got a couple of Jane Austen books. We've got Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, Sherlock Holmes and Dracula. Love these editions so much, they're so beautiful. We then have a couple of other editions. This one I actually got second hand. It is beautiful. I love it so much. And then we've also got Christian Andersen's fairy tales, some of them, and beautiful again. So yeah, this shelf is just my beautiful classics shelf. So this will be a lot more steady now because I've got it on my tripod. So we have my cute little sheep that my partner got me when we were in Iceland. We've got a couple of Camilla books. So we've got the original by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, which I loved, and then I've also got this edition which has been edited by Carmen Maria Macedo, which I've probably butchered the pronunciation, but I love these books. Really wanted them on display. Like, look at them, they're so gorgeous. But behind them, these are my English library book collections. I love collecting this edition. Like, look how gorgeous they look with their spines and stuff. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will do a closer overview for you. So we do have them in alphabetical order. So we've got some of my Jane Austens, the Brontes, we've got some Sherlock Holmes, we've got Middlemarch, which I need to read. Like, these are a mixture of read and unread as well, so definitely need to read some of these. Honestly, my classic shelf are going to be the ones where I have the most unread. Thomas Hardy, who I love. We've got Frankenstein. I've got a couple of editions of Frankenstein and of Dracula. Like, I love them. They're fantastic. And also Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray. So those are the English library editions. And then to the end here, we have these rediscovered classic editions, and I have two of Mary Shelley's ones. So L'Adore is a book I've never heard anyone talking about, but I loved. This is Mary Shelley's romance book. It still has her usual melancholic tone, but it is beautiful, and I loved this book so much. I would love to reread and annotate it. I read this one while I was in Edinburgh and just adored it. It's such a good book and more people need to read it. Also in that same edition I have The Last Man, which is Mary Shelley's post-apocalyptic dystopian book. Honestly, Mary Shelley was so influential to many genres, not just with Frankenstein, but so many people don't realise that. But yeah, love these. I need to read The Last Man. I would like to do that this year. I want to read another Mary Shelley book this year. But yeah, so that is that shelf. I do love this shelf so much. It is so beautiful. But now we will move down. This is another shelf I absolutely love. Like, I do love how my classic shelves look, I'm not gonna lie. So we have on display here the uncensored picture of Dorian Gray, which if you haven't read this and you say Dorian Gray is your favourite classic, read this. It will blow you away. It is so good, so fantastic. It's harder to come by. You can get it on Queerlit UK or just try and type it in and see where you can find it, but this was fantastic. So I have to have it facing out because I love it so much. These are the other type of classic books that I do like to collect. So my English library are my preferred. However, I do also love these. So we've got Oxford Classics and then we've got the vintage red spine editions. So let's have a little bit of a closer look. Oh, and this newspaper is from a little theatre show me and my partner went, which was a show and dinner, which was The Hound of the Baskervilles. Really, really good. Okay, so going into some of the Oxford classics, we've got Charles Dickens, which I've been reading one story from this Christmas book every year. So good, having so much fun with it. We've got this one, which is so underrated. Like, everyone talks about Sherlock Holmes, but this one is so good, by the same author, The Lost World, and it's about dinosaurs, and it's kind of like Journey to the Centre of the Earth, but way before. It's so good. Oh, Notre Dame de Paris, love this. Love this book so much. Really want to read more by Victor Hugo. It was so good. Couple of short stories. One I have read, which is The Vampire and Other Tales of the Macabre. This one I need to read, which is more like ghost tales. Frankenstein, but the 1818 text. I need to read this. I'm actually thinking to do that as a specific vlog in October, to read this and a retelling inspired by Frankenstein is the plan. Anne Radcliffe I want to read, but kind of intimidated by the size of this one. Oscar Wilde, some plays I need to read. Mrs. Dalloway I liked but didn't love, but I have been told that's pretty common upon first read. So now we'll go into some of the modern classics, and these I do like for the kind of the covers. Like, they're so good, like they're just so simple and striking. So yes, I do have one Jane Austen. When I was reading Jane Austen books, I couldn't decide what edition I wanted them in, so I got one in this, one in the English library. I think I'm gonna get this one in the English library, but I also do love these, so I don't know. I've got more in the English library, so I think I'm going to be doing that, but I do really love this. It's so good, and I did like Northanger Abbey. This is kind of her more gothic leaning comedy take. Bloody Chamber I need to read. Name of the Rose I really enjoyed, it was very good. Collector need to read. Picnic at Hang Rock, very good. Slaughterhouse 5, Stoner, and the Gorgonhurst trilogy. Those three I need to read. This one I'm really excited about because it's meant to be a really weird fantasy book, and this one is the bind up of all three. So yeah, really looking forward to reading this one. And then lastly we have Leo Tolstoy. Now I have actually read Anna Karenina and I did like it, but I also found it very slow. I am currently reading War and Peace. I have been reading this, well, for a long time now. I started it and kind of stopped. You can kind of see where I got to here. I would like to get back to reading this, and I was going to be doing a whole War and Peace vlog, but yeah, but we'll see when that actually happens. But I do enjoy it. I think it's really well done, but you really have to be in the mood for it, because God, does Leo Tolstoy go on and on and on. Okay, final shelf is the most packed, the most messy, and is going to be the most awkward to film, so let's get to it. Okay, as I say, I wasn't joking when I said it's messy, and as you can see it's double stacked. I move some of the books out the way, but let's bring you a little bit closer, and I will just tilt these ones down to show you the back. Hang on. Okay, so this is terrible. The lighting's going to be dreadful. Okay, so these ones are my Penguin Black Classics, and I have a mixture. I have a couple of Jane Austen books, Lady Susan's, and the bind up Jane Austen here. The problem is, what I don't like about these editions is you read them once and they look absolutely battered, and I don't really like them, but I do love this cover. But yeah, eventually I'm going to change all of these into the same editions as either Oxford World Classics or Vintage or the English Library. However, there are a couple that I have struggled finding them in any other edition, such as Jude the Obscure. I can only seem to find in this edition. I know that it does have other editions, but I'm just going to have to try and find them. And The Monk by Matthew Lewis. So I've read this one, really enjoyed. Need to read Jude the Obscure, but yeah, this one I haven't seen in any other edition either. So, you know, sometimes they're handy because you can rely on them to have pretty much all the classic books, but at the same time I just hate this edition so much. I do also have one Shakespeare play, which is Macbeth, which is my favourite. I have read it, I have loved it. And so this one I will keep. If it's actually possible, I have two editions in the Wordsworth Classics, which editions I hate even more. But these are both ones I picked up secondhand. So we have Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte, really underrated classic book. I loved this book. I read it in a 24-hour readathon. Well, not even a 24-hour readathon. I was just doing a spend the day relaxing with me, and I read it during that video and I loved it. And then we also have De Profundis and Other Writings by Oscar Wilde, which again, I picked up secondhand that my camera doesn't want to focus on, which, to be fair, I don't blame it because I don't like these editions either, but you know, they're secondhand. A couple of the other ones I've got hidden behind here, you can kind of see them in here. They are this edition that I got as part of a book box, like a book collection thing, and I've got some of the Sherlock Holmes, I've got Lovecraft Compendium, which I loved this was brilliant, and then I've also got Phantom of the Opera, which is here. So these are just ones that was in a book collection from Costco, and it was really cheap, but again, these are books that I will slowly swap out for other editions because I really liked the stories. It was very handy for like finding what stories I liked, but I hate these editions. Okay, before I do behind here, we'll just go through this bit. So first of all, we've got these little black penguin classics, and these are a mixture of short stories, just a general short classic book. So we've got The Beautiful Cassandra, Matilda by Mary Shelley. We've got Oh Lala by Robert Louis Stevenson, which is his vampire short story. We've got a little excerpt from The Odyssey, Fall of Icarus, and also a couple of Oscar Wilde ones. I do actually have one more, but that's on my TBR for June. And this was a little short story, and I like it. I like these collections. I really recommend these for anyone that's looking to get into classics but don't know where to start. I would say try these. They're really cheap. They're normally only £1 or £2, and they give you a really nice idea of an author's writing style and whether you'll like it. We then have a book that's in Thai, but I really wanted a book to commemorate going to Thailand, and I got We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and this was before I'd even read it, but I loved the cover. So, you know, can I read this? No, not a chance, but I'm very happy to have a book. We then have a couple of fairy tales. So we've got Oscar Wilde's Complete Fairy Tales, Irish Gothic Fairy Tales, which is really cool, and then the Complete Fairy Tales of the Brothers Grimm. Lastly, I have 2 editions of Jane Eyre because it was for the longest time my favourite classic, but I need to reread it to continue saying that, to be fair. So we have this one, which my partner got for me probably about 10 years ago now. I absolutely loved it. Oh, maybe even 11 years ago. But yeah, love this so much. It's beautiful. And this one, well, I actually had someone send me because they know how much I love Jane Eyre and collections. And this one is gorgeous. It's actually filled with extra things like letters and stuff, and it's illustrated, and it is just gorgeous. So yeah, I'm very happy to own both of these. And then at the back we have kind of mixed match collections, which I'm not a massive fan of, so that's, I mean, I've got them, but they're not editions that I particularly like. So we've got another Anne Radcliffe book which I need to read, Robert Louis Stevenson book which I need to read, Animal Farm, which I have read, Virginia Woolf Orlando. Really recommend this book. It is so unusual and so good, so would recommend that. Catcher in the Rye, which I need to read. Pride and Prejudice. This is the edition that I read it in, and I really enjoyed it, but I definitely want to replace this edition. Got to keep it because I don't actually own Pride and Prejudice in any other edition, well, apart from that deluxe classic, which, let's face it, I'm not going to read from that edition. Then we have Alice in Wonderland, which I love this. This is gorgeous. I wanted to get the other books that this artist has illustrated, but they're so hard to find. But it's just the original story with some gorgeous illustrations. Like, it's just so good. And some of them, like, you get full-page illustrations. Like, I love it. I love this art style. It is so beautiful. I would actually have this one on display. I just don't know where to put it. I suppose, actually, I could put that in my fancy classic. Yeah, let me do that. Let me move that one up because that is a gorgeous edition. It's getting promoted. We have Winnie the Pooh, which of course I love. Hounds of the Baskerville, which I love this edition. I do want to get it in another edition, but I just... It's classic. Look at it. It's so good. Printer's Devil Court, kind of a ghost story, kind of Frankenstein's-esque. And then we've got these really cool editions, which... Oh gosh, everything just fell. Which I love. Like, I love these editions. They're garish, but I also love them. So we have Turn of the Screw, Jane Eyre, like I said, I have so many copies of Jane Eyre, but also love it. And Tess of the D'Urbervilles. And I love it. They're garish and horrible, but I love them, so I'm keeping them. Okay, let me tidy this mess up and then we'll do the last few books. The last classic books that I own. We have a couple of modern classics, and you can see which ones have been older. Great Gatsby is a book I studied at college, and this is the edition I studied from, so this has still got some of my notes from college in it, which I would like to reread and see my different notes that I did. I did actually study Jane Eyre at college, but the edition with all my notes in that I would have loved to have kept, I lent to somebody to help with them and their essay, but they never gave it back. So it's still a sore point. But I have another F. Scott Fitzgerald book, I just haven't read it yet, which is Tender of the Night. Then have a couple of Shirley Jackson. I recently read We Have Always Lived in the Castle. It was very interesting, a bit weird. And we have The Haunting of Hill House, so I want to read this one. Lolita, which I honestly didn't enjoy reading, but also kept because it's been influential to so many books. House on the Strand, I need to read by Daphne du Maurier. Rebecca, I've read and really enjoyed. And this one, which is underrated, give it a read, it's fantastic. This is The Yellow Wallpaper. If you can hear a weird noise, that is my fridge. It's decided to make some weird noises. And then we have this one, which is The Mystery of the Yellow Room. This is what inspired some of Agatha Christie books by Gaston Leroux. And I loved it. It was a really good book. My mum gifted me that one. Then we've got The Unknown by Algernon Blackwood, a gothic, weird author. Who also inspired H.P. Lovecraft. So I read this one and I did like it. I think some of them weren't good, but there's a short story collection that's always going to happen. This one I want to read by the same author. Short stories by Mary Shelley. This edition I picked up in Edinburgh, so I'm going to keep it. I've never seen this short story collection in any other edition. It's not my favourite edition, because it doesn't match my other editions, but I'm also happy to have it because it's a Mary Shelley book, so that's fine. The Virgin Suicides, I love this. Love this book so much. I really want to reread it. I thought it was fantastic. I picked it up because of the cover. I love this cover so much. If I had this as a print, I would have it on my wall. I adore it so much. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this book. It was really weird and unusual, and I just loved it. I loved the tale of obsession in here. Fantastic book. It's not going to be for everyone, but I loved it. One of my favourites. And then the final book I've got here, I'm not really sure whether it should be here, whether it should be in my historical fiction section. Probably in my historical fiction section, but when I read it, it felt like a classic book, and that's O Caledona. Again, another underrated book, which definitely more people need to read. It was so well done, but I think let's move this to my historical fiction stuff. So from the classic shelf, we have 2 books that are being moved. That is everything, and we are done. We are finally done. Honestly, this has taken me so long to film. I started filming this before 9 o'clock and it is now 10:30 in the morning, so it's taken me a long time to film. Probably gonna take me ages to edit, but I hope you have enjoyed having a closer look at my shelves. Now, if you know that I did own a couple of books that I weren't on here, that is because I did lose a couple in the move, which is unfortunate. But yeah, if that's the reason why you're like, hang on a minute, where's this book, that is probably why. Also, some of them I would have read as ebooks and want to get physical copies of eventually. But yeah, those are the shelves. I'm really happy with these because, as you can see, especially with these ones, I have a lot of space, so I could easily condense things down to free up more space as my book collection grows, because let's face it, it will. My Sarah J Maas shelf I could fit onto one shelf, freeing up a shelf. I don't need the TBR shelf, that frees up another one. My manga could easily fit onto another one, and I already have a shelf that's just kind of filled with odd things. So, you know, there's 4 shelves that I could potentially have as just extra. So I love it. I love this setup. I have always wanted this. I know I said that during my building my dream library, this is my dream. This is something I've always wanted, and I can't believe I finally get it. But there we are. Those are my shelves. It's going to be a long time before I do this again because it's so long, and genuinely, if you've made it to the end, I cannot believe it. Well done for making it this far and actually watching it all the way through. I am so impressed. You deserve a gold star. So if you have made it this far and you don't know what to comment, then just leave a little gold star because you deserve it after all of this. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know, what is your favourite shelf out of all of these, and what are your shelves like? I know I asked that during the building this, like the video of building them all, but I'm gonna stop talking. I've been talking for absolutely ages. I definitely need a drink. Genuinely, thank you so much for watching it. I can't believe it if you've made it all the way to the end, but even if you haven't, thank you to every single person that takes the time to watch these videos. Like, it just means so much when you watch them, interact, like it just means so much. So thank you. And if you have enjoyed this video, consider giving it that thumbs up, subscribe, commenting. Those 3 things really help this channel out, so thank you. My social media links, anyone I've mentioned, will be linked below for you, and I will of course catch you in the very next video.